have to set it up. Yes. Okay, I think we have everything set up. The camera is running, so I'm hitting. Let's see if I turn every mobile phone off. If you have mobile phones off, please turn them off.
Have no flight mode. So.
Or flight mode. Yeah. Flight mode is fine. So today, the very first podcast in English and also recorded in video. So it's kind of exciting. And why in English? Because we have Derek Melber here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And Eric, of course.
I'll be here.
Yeah, you're happy that we are recording? So we normally say that we have radio faces, but now we have...
we can't hide behind that anymore. No.
Okay. So, welcome, Derek. You are... You have been awarded Microsoft MVP since 2004. Author of several books and Chief Technology Evangelist at Managed Engine. Also educator, traveling around the world, focusing on Active Directory, group policy, and security.
Yep, that's all true.
Okay, perfect.
That's all very true.
Yeah,
yes.
So I did my research
yeah,
correctly.
Exactly.
Perfect,
No,
okay.
I can't hide from the internet.
No, it's true. So is your first time in Sweden?
No, I've been, I think my first time was back in 2006 for just one visit. And then I've been coming to Sweden for the last 6 years, usually a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
Meeting with primarily Inuit and customers here in Sweden.
Right. But you're also a Kansas basketball fan.
Huge.
Right?
Yes. Season starts in a week and a half.
Oh, okay.
So... very excited.
Okay, cool. Well, basketball is not that popular in Sweden, but
yeah,
I guess,
no, but you know, it's okay. I mean, I watch a little football here and there.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
But if we go back in time, so how did everything start? Tell me about your background.
So, believe it or not, I have a background in civil engineering,
right?
Which really doesn't make any sense for computers at all. But kind of was involved with a lot of computer simulation. Got involved with Unix, was building out the Windows lab, and went to a seminar type thing way back long ago.
Yeah.
And
when was this?
That was in 1996, and went to the seminar. Company was great. I went to work for them. Rolled into doing seminars and exam development and got more involved with Windows, and then started to get involved with security and group policy and consulting, and just kind of snowballed into this career that I've been working on now for, gosh, I don't even know, 25 years.
All right. Okay.
So,
okay, so from Unix to Windows, that's kind of...
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of Unix,
No?
but of course in engineering, you know, with simulation, you do a lot of Unix, just because of the operating system, and a lot of the analysis tools were actually on Unix primarily. But back in the day, the company had ported over to Windows.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get both running in the lab to simulate structural behavior and whatnot with earthquakes and wind and all that kind of exciting stuff.
Yeah, cool. So some say that you are one of the few in the industry that had deep knowledge about group policy and Active Directory and Windows security. Why is that?
Well, I think, you know, I know as an MVP, I know many other MVPs, and we all kind of have our niche. Yeah. And so I know quite a few legacy group policy MVPs, because there are no more anymore. They're gone. Microsoft doesn't have any more group policy MVPs.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, a lot of them were dealing with education around group policy, and they were dealing with consulting around group policy. One has software with group policy. And so I think for me, I didn't take those routes. I took more of a route of what can I do for organizations in a broader spectrum.
Yeah.
And so I dealt a lot more with the security side, with auditors, security professionals, and how can we use group policy to actually secure the environments, where many of the group policy MVPs didn't take that route. They were more entrenched with group policy and trying to help organizations design, implement, clean up group policy.
All right.
So, we each have kind of an overlap of knowledge, but especially with regard to auditing, like compliance auditing, security, and how that intertwines with Active Directory. Probably very few others have that knowledge base that I do, but I'm sure some do, of course.
Yeah. But you said that there will be no more MVPs on group policy.
Yeah.
So has it been replaced by something else?
Yeah, so about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
Microsoft changed the group policy structure from a very traditional Active Directory group policy, security, SCCM, and instead they kind of made it more generic. And in terms of like right now, I'm an enterprise mobility MVP.
All right. Okay.
What that means, I have no idea.
No, okay.
But I still say I'm an Active Directory MVP.
Yeah.
Because that's the last MVP that I had, and I still continue to fall under that category.
All right.
And obviously, Active Directory today is my main technology that I focus on and worry about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Since you have written a lot of books about Active Directory and group policy, so how come you are so passionate about these topics?
I don't know. I think for me, it's great to be able to take something technical,
Yeah.
and be able to communicate with everyone in an organization. I can talk with, a C-level person which really doesn't understand Active Directory and communicate technology to them.
Yeah.
But I can also, like yesterday, I sat with a group of Active Directory administrators and we were completely geeking out with technology talk.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was, great. And I'm to be able to have a conversation with someone with acronyms and deep knowledge and historical information and just talk like we're talking here and communicate. Yeah. I mean, no one else would understand what we're talking about. But I enjoy the technology aspect of things and being able to communicate those, whether that be with sales, whether that be with education.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter to me. I just enjoy the technical aspect.
Yeah. And Active Directory is based in the Microsoft environment normally, and but some say that Windows is not a secure system. What's your comment on that? Since you begin in Unix area.
Well, there's a couple of views on that, of course. I think if we take the first view, which is, of course, Unix versus Windows, right? That's one of the very first things that people want to fight about. And usually it's the Unix people that want to fight about it. The reality is it's an operating system.
Yeah.
And all operating systems are vulnerable. Do I think Windows is more or less secure than Unix? No. Not if you configure it correctly.
Yeah.
But the reality is Unix comes installed more secure than Windows, but that doesn't mean Windows can't become more secure.
Yeah.
So it's that angle. And if you actually look year after year on the statistics of who is attacked more, who has more vulnerabilities, usually Unix wins. Mm-hmm. So
right.
I think it's the idea with that debate is Windows is everywhere.
Yeah.
And Unix is everywhere, but you don't really see it, right? It's more in the data center. It's more the server side. So you really don't see a lot of those aspects. If we look at, is Windows secure from just a Windows corporation standpoint? It could be better.
Yeah.
It could be a lot better.
Yeah.
I think right now we're in trouble. I think we're in trouble in the industry.
How come?
The attackers are steps ahead of us.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do these things. But, I met with customers yesterday, and a lot of them are trying to determine how to isolate certain aspects of their network, how to secure. Do I create silos for communication? Do I create certain communication avenues?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Is it going to actually provide any overall security? And I think when you look at a network, whether you create isolation silos or not, if they're talking, if you're breached, you're breached. So I think we need to do more. Yeah. One of the things that I stress in a lot of the things that I do, whether it be webinars or seminars, Like tomorrow, I have a seminar. I will start talking about what we can do as organizations and administrators to make sure that we see when we're under attack.
All right. Yes.
Detection is the key.
It
Yeah,
is, and what's amazing though, I'll be honest. I've been doing the same talk all year, and around the world, 22 different countries, administrators aren't looking at basics. I mean, the example is like domain admins group.
Yeah.
Everyone has a domain admins group.
Yeah.
No one is monitoring for changes to that group. I mean, when I say no one, it's less than 5% of the people that I've come in contact with around the world in 22 countries this year.
Yeah.
How would you say hardening is an issue here? Can we make Windows more secure by hardening it consistently?
Of course. And, those are the things that become more difficult. And when I say they're more difficult, there's not a window in Windows where you could open up, that's the hardening window, and you go in and you make tweaks, right? So you have to go to a complete variety of areas within the operating system to complete that task. And so if you go through the steps to harden your Windows environment, you are much better off than most organizations. So why don't organizations do that? Well, one, they don't have time.
Yeah.
Two, some can't. I was at an organization yesterday, and the organization has legacy applications that require legacy authentication protocols and communication technologies like SMB.
All right. Yeah.
And they can't. Their entire organization is built on these applications. So they can't go in and up security. So what they have to do is they have to make decisions on who's going to communicate with these devices, how it's going to work, and what is going to be secure and what isn't secure. But again, if it's on the same network,
Yeah.
that's
True.
the problem. Do you see my point now? I mean,
Yeah.
it comes full circle. So the attackers know this. The attackers have the ability to scan the network, to find the holes, to get into those environments.
Yeah.
Once they have a hold in those environments, now they move laterally and up through the environment. And that's why I'm saying we're behind.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to legacy applications and
Absolutely.
operating systems.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And I'm going to guess that 70%, maybe more, have legacy applications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We go back to the Active Directory. This is actually a question from Eric because you're doing a lot of penetration pen testing, and normally pen testers look first at Active Directory, which hackers always do.
Kind of feel like
Of course.
In pen testing, we kind of feel that if there is an Active Directory in the environment, which it often is, then that is a very juicy target, if I may say so. So the question is, how can we deal with that?
Hardening the Active Directory. Well, so one of the issues with Active Directory, or a couple, is it's known, right? We know the port it communicates on. It's very difficult to move it away from that port. So pen testers can easily determine if Active Directory is there, okay? Once I determine if Active Directory is there, if I can get into Active Directory with any type of read access, say, for example, you come in through a workstation and you jeopardize the workstation, you get into the workstation, I get one account, even if that account is a basic account, it has read access in Active Directory.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to remove that because you start thinking about email. Email utilizes the read access to find out email addresses through Active Directory.
Yeah.
If I remove read access, how am I going to communicate? I mean, at the core level. So some of these things become very difficult. So organizations, security-based organizations, have tried to take different approaches with what is allowed, what is not allowed, what should be allowed, and trying to reduce that type of access. But Microsoft has also done some things trying to increase security around authentication protocols, making sure that the legacy authentication protocols can be removed, like LAN Manager and NTLM. Upping SMB, now we have more secure SMB for communication between computers. we have different technologies that Microsoft is implementing. But again, if you take an organization that's been around for 20 years running Active Directory and things are set, it's difficult to change directions. It's difficult to know if I change this toggle, whether it be through group policy or the registry, what's it going to break?
Yeah.
It's working today, so I can toggle this, but it may not work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Huh. I'll take the chance. And people are taking the chance. And,
Yeah.
and that's it. So we have things, we have technologies that we can implement. We have settings that we can implement. Microsoft, other third-party tools do that. But it's sometimes difficult to get it into an organization.
Yeah.
2 days ago, I met with 2 different organizations, and they're 24/7. I mean, if they have any downtime, they're losing money by the minute. And so they're afraid. I mean, they still had a Windows NT4 server.
All right.
And the reason they had it was it's running, and they don't want to take the time to upgrade it because it's running.
Yeah.
And every second, they're losing money. So, organizations are making decisions, sometimes poor decisions, but usually money wins over security.
Yeah.
If we can make money, it wins over security.
Right. So auditing, you talked about auditing a bit earlier. Why is this important, I think?
So if we look at auditing from a raw standpoint, auditing is important because of drift. Okay? Drift is the idea. Okay, so let's say it's Monday. I install a new server. I go through the hardening guide, and I harden my server, and I throw it into the wild, into production. Everything's running great. I know on Monday it was secure because I did everything. I had a checklist, and I made sure everything was done. Tuesday, I was at a trade show. Someone else in the office decided to go in and tweak some of those settings because they needed something to work that I didn't know about on Monday. So they tweaked some things, loosening security.
Yeah.
Wednesday, I came back to the office and I had to tweak some things to make sure they were working. And then by Friday, we drifted away from what security was on Monday.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. On Tuesday, they were supposed to put the setting back, but they forgot because they got busy. Yeah. Wednesday, I was supposed to set the setting back on Thursday, but I forgot. So on Friday, we do an audit and we're like, all these security settings are adrift. And so auditing becomes important to make sure that security that you think is in place is actually in place.
All right.
And how it got modified, who knows? Who knows? Yeah. It could have been accidental. It could have been malicious. I don't know what it is. I think traditional auditing in the United States is totally different, though. Because auditing in the United States is done by PwC or Deloitte or KPMG, one of the big 4 or 5 or however many there are today. And they go in with a checklist that is not even close to what we need as a checklist for overall security. Yeah. And they charge hundreds of dollars, and they go in and say, the domain admins group is good. Yay. But they didn't look at the other 10 groups. Yeah. They look at the password policy and say, yay, it's good. It isn't good, but it meets a certain criteria. So auditing for organizations should be done internally to keep themselves honest and make sure that things are correct.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the general auditing for SOX or HIPAA or ITIL or whatever it is, they're so generic, it becomes very difficult to make those solid.
Do you think it's a good idea to take in pen testers and people that make external audits on a corporation?
Absolutely, 100%. I think it almost should be a mandate. I think the problem with it becoming a mandate now becomes, where does that political line go, because it's like, I want you to come in, but make sure we do a good pen test. I don't want to look bad to the boss. So I think that organizations should bring in independent pen testers just to get an idea of what's going on. We need to know how our networks look from the outside, from an attack perspective, so that we can make better decisions.
All right. But one thing I'm curious about, if you add all the auditing settings in Active Directory, isn't it hard to monitoring because the logs are so chatty, or there's so many things audited, so it's almost hard to see the trees in the forest, as we say in Sweden.
It is. I don't know. It's absolutely. That's a perfect analogy. So, Microsoft does so many things well, but unfortunately, they also do many things poorly. And what they do really well is track changes. It's amazing the detail of what Microsoft can track that an admin can go look at. The problem is, when you look at it, it's worse than a forest. It is. It's like being in a rainforest in the middle of a continent, and you're not even near civilization.
All right.
So with monitoring, and this is again what I talk about in my sessions about insider attacks. I try to look the opposite, and I try to, instead of worrying about being in the forest, before I go into the forest, I want to know what I look for. Okay, so I want to look for a particular tree. So if I want to look for a particular tree, before I go into the forest, I can create a rule that helps me determine if that tree exists. So example, if the domain admins group changes membership, let me know.
Yeah.
So I'm set up a rule that's looking for that. And if it occurs, it tells me. So I don't want to go look for it. I want it to tell me.
Yeah.
You know, for example, I give the analogy to administrators that are at my events. I'm like, okay, you're here. And if your phone were to vibrate right now and you receive an email that your account had a failed logon, what does that mean? Well, that means you're under attack because you're here. You didn't do the failed logon. Someone else did. So those are things that you can look for. So if we can actually look for areas of attack that we know are going to indicate that to us, it will help us determine when we are under attack and when hopefully we can stop before we're breached. And we can do that with totally different areas of the operating system.
Yeah. But do you have some sort of recommendation, like a top 10 list or something? I know that you have written something on your blog. Or
Sure. Yeah. I mean, top 5, top 10, top 20,
Because there's so many settings.
There are so many settings. There are so many settings. But what we do in the seminar is we actually go through probably a top 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I actually show it.
Yeah.
Instead of just talking about it.
Right.
I actually show it. I mean, seeing something is actually believing, and the administrators then are empowered to go back and do that. Yeah. So I show them, and I show them how to set it up. I show them how to trigger it and what it looks like, so they can actually see the information. And I think that is very powerful for the people that attend the seminars.
Yeah, right. So, what are the challenges now when organizations move maybe from traditional Active Directory to cloud-based, like Azure AD or maybe something in AVS or?
So I think there's a couple of hurdles there.
Yeah.
One is Azure does not have the controls that Active Directory does.
Yeah.
On-prem Active Directory. So we went for 19 years, right, with developing solutions, putting things in place. Group policy has grown a lot. In Azure, we don't have group policy.
Yeah.
Right, we have Intune.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not group policy.
Yeah.
And it's not really tied that closely with Azure Active Directory. We don't have the controls, right?
Yeah.
So when organizations move from on-prem to Azure Active Directory, you're losing a lot. So most organizations that I've seen stick with hybrid. And I think hybrid is going to be the way we move forward until Microsoft adds the same controls.
Yeah. Or
we just stay in hybrid for a long time.
Yeah.
I think also the cloud, it's funny. People go, cloud, what's that? If you're not in IT, you're like, cloud is clouds. Yeah. It's the internet. I mean, it's the internet. It's the wild. It's out there. And so many organizations struggle with putting their stuff in the internet, in the cloud.
Yeah.
So I think the hybrid world is going to be controlling. But I think security is a number one issue, an absolute number one issue. But also accessibility. 2 days ago, early, I was at the customer, and there was like 4 admins there, and they had moved to Azure, and they were in a hybrid environment. Yeah. And so we were briefly talking about that, and the admin picked up his laptop and said, but this is a problem. And he tried to get into Azure, and it said, no access. Azure was down in all of Sweden. So I looked at my phone 5 minutes later, and there was an MVP thread from Sweden saying Azure's down, Azure's down.
All right.
So,
okay.
I mean, if I can't get to it, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
But at least it's secure.
That is good security. You're right.
If it's down,
Just unplug it. Just unplug it. Yeah. But I think those are the two main issues. It's security isn't there. We don't have the controls like we have on-prem. And if it's down, we're in trouble.
Yeah. So. Do you think that Microsoft is working on getting more controls in Azure
They
Active
are.
Directory?
They are.
Yeah.
They just added some new controls in Azure Active Directory last week.
Yeah.
Related to passwords.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. But I just don't understand why we have 20 plus years of history of knowledge and it wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, before May of this year, you couldn't have a password in Azure Active Directory more than 16 characters. That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, you couldn't have a space in your password.
Yeah.
I mean, are we in the year 2019? It's just, it's silly to me to think that they made these limitations and they rolled it out. So, I mean, those are changed now.
Yeah.
But why did we have that limitation in the year 2019? I just don't understand. So, I think the other problem that I'm seeing with the cloud is people are jumping to the cloud, small organizations specifically, and not really thinking about the security aspect. And when you look at the breaches that have occurred over the years, there's some huge breaches.
Yeah.
I mean, this year is the largest financial breach ever at Capital One. And that occurred in
until
2019.
next year's, I guess.
Until next year. But I mean, if we look at all what we're talking about here, hardening, we're talking about security of Windows, we're talking about security of Unix, all of this, if every year the breaches get bigger, are we doing what we should be doing? I'm looking at that.
Yeah.
Right. So again, what I try to help organizations with around their Active Directory environment is, yes, we need to secure the small little holes and all of those things, but we also need to worry about the basics. Yeah. Let's know when privilege groups change. Let's control privilege groups. Let's control privileged access. Let's make sure that we're patching the machines, because that's one of the things that attackers use, right? Pen testers love unpatched machines.
Yeah.
I mean, and so you scan, right? You scan a machine for where it's not patched, and then you use an attack against that vulnerability that is, it's basic stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It works so well.
Yeah.
It is. It's. I mean, and it's. In my opinion, those are the basics. So we need the higher technologies, but we also need to take care of basics.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think are the biggest security risks at the moment on a global level?
Biggest security risk globally: end users.
Maybe. So that's why you're an educator, I guess.
Yeah. Gosh, it's end users. I don't care how many times you tell an end user, how many times you train an end user. Don't do that. If something comes across their email, click. They're gonna do it. But I think end users is a major issue. And so one of the things that I stress, and normally I stress it multiple times, is secure your endpoints. We got to secure your endpoints.
Yeah.
I think...
And by endpoint, you mean like the
workstations.
Workstations. Yeah. The Windows client.
Now, I also do mean servers, right?
Yeah.
Because that becomes an endpoint.
Yeah.
But I think, like anything in life, we go in cycles, right?
Yeah.
And so I think... we years ago, we were hardening endpoints and workstations, and we got the firewall on the endpoint, and we did all these things. Well, now we're worried about if an endpoint is messed up, how do we get it back quickly? So now we use VMs, we use deployment technologies, and we're more focused on that than actually the security, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So now the security isn't as high, because if it's breached, we'll just re-provision the endpoint. But it's not secure. So I'm trying to encourage, make sure you secure your endpoint because of the user, right? That's kind of Oops. That's kind of tied together.
Yeah.
I think also we have a debate on passwords.
Yeah.
And we're finally having this debate. When I started in 2019 doing my seminars, I really thought that I was going to see this major push for multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No.
No, it's less than 5%. I ask every group I'm in front of, in the next 5 years, how many do you feel your organization is going to be full-blown multi-factor authentication? Less than 5%.
Yeah.
So I think in 2020, what I'm hoping that we see is password-less authentication.
Yeah.
So instead of multi-factor, it's just passwordless. And we're moving towards that. I'm hoping to see that.
Yeah.
I know that in our technologies, we are implementing passwordless authentications.
How does it work? You use a smart card or
They use some other device.
some other device.
Yeah, and it's I think where we need to move. I really do. Passwords. I mean, Microsoft and NIST and probably 10 other organizations have done a lot of studies on passwords, and all the studies point to the reality that users come up with tricks to make the password remembrance easier.
Yeah.
And those tricks are known by the attackers, so the attackers know where to go in. And I mean, a password that you think is secure, even if it's longer, the attackers have technologies to overcome that before you even put your password in, because they know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I think passwords and multi-factor need to start becoming more common, but I'm not seeing that that's occurring.
Right. So I think we're almost end for today. But before we end, what are you gonna do now? What are you gonna do next here in Sweden? So
I've seen multiple customers this week, which has been absolutely fantastic. And then I actually have a seminar tomorrow. It's a live cast, which is kind of cool. So it'll be similar to this, and I'll be showing my computer and going through some different things. And what I try to do in these seminars is give admins something they can immediately do when they leave the seminar.
Oh, perfect.
So I want them to go back to the office and do stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Which if it was rocket science, they wouldn't do it. So I want it to be somewhat easy. So I give them action items, lists of things that they can do, things that they can check, things they can implement to make an immediate impact. So that'll be tomorrow morning.
Yeah. And how can we see the live broadcast in some way?
Absolutely. If you go to inuit.se, you can sign up there. It's only an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think it's very valuable. Anyone that's in IT related to Windows and deals with Active Directory, the information will be valuable to you. So that'll be tomorrow. And then usually when I'm here in Stockholm, we do a recording or two so that it can be, again, just more information can be shared with more people. And then next week I head to Copenhagen and Amsterdam for more seminars and more trade shows and more talking. So.
Right. Okay. So interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming today.
Thanks for inviting me. This was
podcast.
great.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm bad with the endings. I don't know.
Oh yes, it's always hard, especially in English, I guess. So,
Yeah,
but thank you for
sure.
coming anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.